And we have Randy Unsbee.
WeatherTech Laguna Seca on a beautiful day.
Yes, absolutely. I hear today you are racing the green car. What number is this?
This is number 969. This is one of 9 cars that Don Racine has brought down for the race weekend here for the Mini versus Mustang race.
Sweet.
This is actually owned and usually driven by his daughter, Julie Racine. They're not racing as much anymore, so he has this among his other cars available for drivers to run at events. So I'm teamed with David Cooper from the Bay Area. He's fortunately...
David Cooper.
The David Cooper.
The David Cooper. Wow.
Great name for a Mini Cooper, don't you think?
Exactly, huh? No, absolutely.
He has raced this car before, which is helpful. He's also raced here at Laguna Seca before, but not in a Mini. So at least he knows his way around the track and he knows his car. In my situation, I've never raced on the track or raced this car or raced at night, so there's really no reason to expect anything will go wrong.
Yes, no.
But it was interesting last night. We had qualifying last night, and that went pretty well. So
how did you do last night?
I haven't seen the final results. Certainly David was faster, I know that, but I did manage to pass some cars. I caught some cars and passed them, so I certainly wasn't the slowest out there. I definitely wasn't the fastest because the Mustangs were going by me at a whole different rate of speed. So that was very exciting with the bright headlights on and everything.
So with the Mini versus Mustang, what's your initial thought? The field is definitely outnumbered the Mustangs, but how do you think it's going to perform on the day of the race?
I think there's a couple of the really faster, highly tuned Mustangs, like the number 62, my former car, like Dennis Racine's 177. That car is really quick, and Dennis is a really fast driver. So there's several Minis, I think, who could give a couple of the Mustangs a run for the money, certainly in the corners. Not on the straightaways, but in the corners they'll be able to. So since this harkens back to the era of like Goodwood Racing in England or in Australia, or our Trans Am series back in the late 60s, early 70s, where Minis did run with Trans Am cars and usually gave them fits because they were so much more maneuverable. This is kind of a throwback to that era. That's what Don Racine and the Velocity people came up with.
Cool, very nice. So last time I saw you race in Portland at the 60th anniversary Mini race, you were in your original car. You've been racing that for a while. I see a board over there. Can we look at that?
Yeah.
Can you give us a walkthrough on that?
The Racines did a really nice job of putting together kind of a summary of these 2 cars. These 2 cars are originally part of a 3-car team from the Midwest. We're based out of Illinois, and it was under Peterman Unsbee Racing Enterprises, or Pure Minis. And you'll see Pure Minis on the back of the cars. This is early 70s. That's my brother in the number 61 car, which Don Racine's driving. And then 63 is the late Bill Peterman. His car is lost to history, so we don't know where that one is. But they were able to find my number 62 in Ohio a number of years ago and restored it. So they have 2 of the original 3 Peterman Unsbee Racing Enterprises cars. And mine was a 62. This is me at Blackhawk Farms in one of the races. In the first 2 seasons of racing, we won 16 straight races, undefeated, with 2 championships. And then after that, I went on to SCCA racing and then on to various types of cars. So I sold this to a gentleman in Tennessee who did autocrossing with it and some racing, and then he sold it to someone else, and it got lost to history like Bill's. But they discovered it and completely restored it from the ground up, bare metal restoration, and they had 61. My brother had kept his car, so it was easy to find, and he sold it to Don Racine about 10 years ago or so.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, was there a period where you did not have your driver's the racing license from the early days?
Yeah, you had to be 21 to be able to race back then. And we lied about my age by like 1 day. So I could get my driver's school in on a Saturday and run my first race as a novice on Sunday, which I won. And I won all the races after that. And even though it wasn't a full season, I had enough points to take the championship. The next season I ran 9 races and won all 9 with the car. My brother, who had previously been racing his Mini, the number 61, won a whole bunch of races and regional championships as well. And Bill Peterman also won in Midwest Council in the number 63. So it was nice to be reunited with number 62 2 years ago at the 60th anniversary Mini race.
Nice.
And even though I had to start dead last because of an engine change before the feature, we were able to move up to third place in class and ended up on the podium and got the Fast Charger Award for passing the most cars. So it's a really good car. It's a fast car. I think it definitely will be contending towards the front of the Minis.
Wow,
for sure.
Nice. Well, you definitely have you're like a horse. We have a long racing pedigree.
Well, I raced in the 70s and just in the early 80s. Then didn't race until the late 90s. Did about another 10 years in other cars and won 4 championships in those. And then the competition kind of went away. So since my wife has family in England, whenever we go over to England, I drive on racetracks over there like Brands Hatch and Goodwood and Silverstone and Thruxton and Donington and those places. And then just recently got back into racing minis because of, thanks to Don Racine offering me rides in his cars.
So what was necessary for you to get back into racing again recently?
Well, fortunately, I didn't have to go through any schools or classes because of my history. So I had like 2 periods of about 10 years of racing cars and winning races. So it's just a matter of talking to the SCCA director of those kinds of things, and they just gave me a waiver and I got my license. So if you want to start new, you definitely need to go through a racing school with one of the car clubs or one of the vintage car clubs or with an organization like Pro Drive at Portland International Raceway. Nationwide, there are professional type driver schools where they take you through all the steps. And when you're done, you're qualified to get at least a novice license. So there's a couple of different ways of, if you've never raced before, of actually doing that. In fact, when I got back into racing the second time, I didn't have to go through a driver's school, but because I was on a new track and a new car, I went through a driver's school anyway, just to kind of brush up on my skills because it's been a number of years. So that helped me kind of get back into things again. So it can't hurt.
All right, nice. Well, you're inspiring me, Randy, to learn to possibly, hopefully, maybe I should get my license.
Well,
and how do I go about? I just need to go.
I would look for instance like Sovereign or SVRA. Okay. I would talk to them about or Cascade in the Portland area, Cascade Car Club. They'll have driver schools that you can attend, and then and if you really want like a really hands-on, intensive. With a pro or semi-pro driver teaching you, someplace like Pro Drive or PIR or some of the other racing schools around the country can do the same thing. They cost more, but you're going to get, you're not going to make as many mistakes as you will as a novice or like I do when I get back into a car or for the first time on a track. Like last night was the first time on Laguna Seca, and I'd done it in iRacing just so I knew where the track turned, but it's a whole different thing when you're actually driving the car in traffic and with the sun going down.
Nice. Well, last time I was in court for my speeding ticket, I was told by the the judge that I should probably be looking at that as a place to be
and not drive on the street.
Yes, yeah. So I'm going to take his advice and maybe yours as well, 'cause your inspiration today, watching you go out and tear up some rubber out there.
Did you want to take a look inside what the seat area would look like?
Yeah.
It's fairly tight.
Yeah. How much has changed from back in the day?
Well, since back in the 70s when I first raced this car, it was a little more primitive and we were a little more on a shoestring budget. Don Racine and Dennis, his son, have really updated these minis. They're far faster and I think far more technologically advanced than we had in the 70s. Plus, back in the 70s, we were heavily restricted by race regulations. So there wasn't as much we could do to the engines. We couldn't lighten the flywheels as much. There's a lot more things that had to be stock or close to stock on the Minis than it is now. So these cars, and I found this out when I raced it in Portland 2 years ago, it's a lot faster than when I raced it back in the 70s. So they're a whole nother breed. They look the same, but they're quicker.
Wow. What motor were you running back in the...
Well, they were still 1275s, bored out to 1293. You can have a racing cam and racing pistons. But there was not as much you could do in terms of the block. You couldn't use a newer block, which are stronger. And in terms of how many main bolts you had of the crankshaft, the biggest problem with the Minis back then was you get to about 7,500, 8,000 RPMs and the crank would start whipping up and down. And when you'd spin a bearing or throw a rod or something. So the reliability was not great. I was fortunate winning the 16 straight races because I rebuilt my engine after every race. So after the race, I'd pull it out. And one person easily could take the engine out, rebuild it, and put it back in.
Really?
So I would do that after every race. And so In the first 2 years, I never had any mechanical failures, but in subsequent years I did because the cars are so much more highly stressed than they are today. So it's a much, even though it looks like the same engine, it's basically the same engine, the 1275 board up to 1293. It has more sophisticated parts inside than we had available to us in the 1970s.
Wow. Well, cool, Randy. Thanks for sharing today. And
you bet.
I look forward to seeing you.
Tonight on the track. We have an hour enduro tonight and an hour enduro on Sunday.
All right.
Day off tomorrow.
Keep the tires on the road.
Gonna try it.
The corkscrew looks fun.
Had a few close calls yesterday, but I know which way the track goes now.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Randy.
All right. Thank you.
See you soon. All right, I'm ready to get in. Hey, where's my seat? There's my seat. Come on. I want in. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Hey.